Now, boy, when I got the email tonight, I was looking at this and I was just blown away. One of my friends that we were involved for about 20 years moved to Florida, got back into motorcycling and got a restored, this looks like an older BSA, I'm not sure, he didn't say. Maybe it's a trend now, it's a BSA. And he's out restoring an older motorcycle just like I am. That's pretty cool. We're going to start exchanging emails, and he lives in Florida, so we're not going to get to see him unless we go to Florida. But boy, what a great thing the internet is when it comes to things like this. Now, the neat thing is his brother still lives up here, and his brother has several motorcycles, and we'll be getting together with him in the spring for sure. But I love restoring an old BSA. What a cool thing.
You'll find Pierre Skerry. He's a telecom engineer by trade, but has spent most of his adult life making an absolutely perfect scale model of the Ferrari 312 PB. He not only had to make every single part himself, but he also had to make and design the mold for every single part.
I wanted to make something like a dream, a Ferrari which we can have in the dining room. It could cost a lot of money to make such a car. For me, it cost maybe 20,000 hours because I had no money. It was my challenge to learn how to make everything in this car. I just took photographs of the real car and I made all my drawings from this photograph.
How long did it take you to do the drawings for it?
3 years. To make the car, 12 years. When I was young, I saw Ferrari in many races, and my dream was to get this sound, this music at home. I could not buy one, I had to make one.
No, it's all right. Music isn't a bad translation. The main reason why this took 15 years to make is that under the body, you'll find a scaled-down version of the original engine, which actually works. It makes the Ferrari music.
This is from John Cafaro. Pretty unbelievable.
I made that engine all by myself because I had to make it to get the right sound. I had to make a 12 cylinders engine.
But I mean, that's just unbelievable. So what, you take the piston going up and down?
Yes, it is fuel injected and dry sump. And this is a 100cc flat 12 with 24 valves because this is a 4-stroke engine.
Hold on, you made, don't tell me you made the valves.
Yes, here is a valve. And the valve springs here. I put 5 gears and reverse also.
You've done reverse?
Yes, reverse, yes. And
so the gearbox works?
Yes, it works.
Does it drive the wheels?
Yes, sure.
So the car will actually work?
Yes, the car could run if we could find someone to drive it.
Maybe a Ford GT40. But this time he wants to use outside help, which means he has to sell the original. It's worth many, many thousands of pounds, but I can conceive of no finer toy.
Anyway, that was from John Cafaro, and now, all right, I got a better challenge for you. Make it fly. Anyway, that is pretty impressive, I got to admit. That is impressive. From John Cafaro. Now, it is really a gloomy, cloudy day out there, but it's above freezing. Karen and I wake up before the birds this morning, but look out in the driveway. See this? Karen and I were going out yesterday, and as we were going out the back door, that's a pigeon, by the way. There was pigeons in our driveway, there were pigeons in the driveway, and a red hawk came down off the roof of Mike's house, grabbed the pigeon, he pretty much exploded, grabbed him in his talons, and flew off in this direction. And I was just thinking, I don't think my birds are like that. I don't know.
The birds are too small for them. They wouldn't be happy.
How big was that hawk, Karen?
It was big.
Bigger, way bigger than a pigeon. But that's what's left of one of our friendly pigeons that eats under our feeder every day. The pigeons eat off the ground. And since then, our birds are not crazy about coming to the feeder. Guess I wouldn't be crazy either. Well, apparently the squirrel is not intimidated by this hawk that's been eating pigeons in our driveway. Apparently he doesn't care. Yeah, we're talking to you. You talking to me? Well, there's nobody else here, is there? Now, how ironic is this? I got my model aviation today in the mail. And look at what's in model aviation, a red-tailed hawk. Don't you eat any more of my birds. My birds are going to get you. They're going to set a trap for you. I'm always looking in the AMA magazine for some new ideas. Here's a great idea, $2,000 reward for the concourse winner. I think that would get everybody sand and silver. I think this guy sanded some silver along the way anyway. We've gotten stuff from Bernie Trent about this model. I like that idea. I'm just looking through the magazine, possibly get some more ideas for paint jobs. And I was looking at this and I was thinking, here's exactly what I don't want, is to turn the plane into SpaghettiOs. I like this a lot better. Simple and dignified. It's in the control line scale, a column, in Bill Boss's column. Now, Jim Smith is the one that gave us our Ferrari flag. Look, he's got his picture in the AMA magazine this month. Karen and I are waiting patiently through our cups of coffee and breakfast, but we don't see our birds. They are really afraid of that. I bet that hawk is still in the neighborhood. The birds have like a sixth sense of when he's around.
Nobody's business.
What's nobody's business?
Where I bought it.
This is not a commercial enterprise. Check this out. This lists all of Karen's. This is one of two that we got. And I think this is a really neat thing. I don't know if I showed this already. But now you take this over to the number. You read, what you do is this. You read the number of, you want Pacelli number 8. So you take this to number 8. And when you open the cover, number 8 comes out. There's number 8. How cool is that? And of course, I've got a lot of. I got to get one of these for down in the shop too. Keeps the discs. You don't have all those ugly cases or anything. Nice little tip. And then you're all done. You close this up, of course, and you close up the case, and it's neat as a pin. And it's a secret now. Karen doesn't want anybody to know. She got this from Home Shopping Network, HSN. So the day will start off. We finally have some inventory. And when you buy a sleeve of sandpaper, at least I feel like I have inventory again. I can't believe I almost ran out of sandpaper the other day. I got to mix up a second pint. Decant it, of course. Could do that off camera. We're into the second pint of silver that's going on this model. But the trick is, and I wanted to put this all in one picture. It doesn't matter how much you put on the model, it's how much you sand off that matters. So in one small picture, it's the hawk and the pigeon
Or is it the pigeon and the hawk? I don't know. It's got to go on, it's got to come off. And we're going to be doing that probably the better part of today. We'll try to actually, I haven't even finished my coffee yet, but all of those parts have been sitting up by the heat even an extra day, so they should sand out beautifully.
Now Bernie Trent sent a few of these pictures, and this is incredible to me because I got to, well, the day of the motorcycle show, we were right there. We saw some of this action, but check the next couple of pictures out. This is incredible. Now we got to see some of this crane. Actually it was on the other side of the river, but we did get to see it, and it looked enormous. Think how big this crane must be to pick this thing up out of the water. Unbelievable. Now, unlike 9/11, knowing that everybody got out of this alive, I guess, gets my day started on a positive note. Just thinking about that Red Hawk yesterday, though, whoa. I need my birds back. I guess the birds have an instinct. They know something happened there, or what? Maybe they all watched it happen. I don't know. Now, if you remember when we were crossing on the ferry, that's what the ice in the river looked like. And believe me, this has been a brutal winter. It's brutal out there right now. If we're going to get to do any spraying today, time will tell when the phone starts ringing. Now, I guess it's one of the miracles in my lifetime to know that everybody got out of this alive. Not one person died. Amazing. And in this morning's newspaper, they recovered the other engine. So I guess they're going to figure out what happened if red hawks or pigeons or whatever flew into that engine. It scares me to think you get on an airliner and whatever happened, it happened to both of the engines too. This was a glider. And what an amazing pilot that guy must have been, the pilot of this. Boy, I'll bet he sees that in his dreams for the rest of his life, as well as all the people that were on board, 155 people. Now in today's paper too, there was an interesting side note. The crew of this plane, except for one person, the whole crew was over 55 years old. They had all senior people, no newbies on the plane. And I guess it worked to the people's advantage. And thanks to Bernie Trent for reminding us what a miracle this was, right close to our house, and I guess how lucky we all are that this plane didn't come down in Rutherford, because they had planned on it coming in Teterboro Airport. Well, the planes, I guess if you watch my videos, you know the planes go right over my house. Imagine this thing landing in Rutherford. Woo. Anyway, we're going to get started sanding, suck that coffee down, and get started. And watch out for the red-tailed hawks.
Well, we'll fill up our bowl with some hot soapy water and get sanding. Looks like we're going to have a couple hours to get some parts sanded and maybe sprayed today, but it really is brutal out there. And not only is it cold, the wind is howling. And at some point today I have to make a gas tank for Scott Dinger anyway. I have to make some more parts for it, so looking at what dried up from the previous day, I think we're in pretty good shape here. This is going to work out pretty good. Now, my philosophy here is I try to find the worst part that's going to need the most cycles. This is going to need at least 2 or 3 more coats of silver. So I want to get this started. The flaps and elevators look like they'll need 1 or 2 more, but again, to start with the worst piece, because what I don't want to have happen is get to the last, where all the parts are nicely in silver, and I still have 4 cycles on this. I'd rather get this going. This is by far the worst part. Now when I say the worst part, let's identify the mistakes. Dry spot, that's going to need another coat of CA in there, thin CA. First I'll sand it. Fillets are going to need a little bit of work, although that side looks pretty good. This is the side we fixed yesterday, and we're going to fix it again. We're going to do the same thing. There's a dry spot up here. You can see that dry spot right there. If you candle it, and when I say candling, let's put it over by the light. You can kind of pick up, here's that spot we were working on that really is going to need a lot of work. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this sanded out. Here's a spot back here where I didn't get the joint just right. But believe me, this will all sand out. I'm going to get this all sanded out. And then hopefully, before I even start the other parts, run outside and respray this. Now this is, from this point on, I have the silver in the gun. permanently. Now, I also have the clear and a clear gun. If I see I'm sanding through and it looks like that's what's going to happen here, this is a real, I put my finger in there or something, it's going to need a little bit more work right there. Well, the sooner we get started, the quicker it's going to go. Now, every time I sand these parts out, they'll get just a little bit easier to sand out because we're not working on as many mountaintops and valleys. Thinking about this sandpaper thing, I remember more than once on a Sunday afternoon running out of sandpaper and swearing I'd never get lower than about 50 sheets of paper. Shows you what I know. Shows you what I know. Shows you what I know. I can't believe I did that. And it didn't cause me any inconvenience or setback. Just, you feel like a senior citizen. Well, Wendy, you are a senior citizen. Anyway, I wanted to show how once it's been sanded a few times, the sanding goes, but you can see instantly, you can see every little flaw popping through. And here's the point that I wanted to make. Even though this is loaded with flaws, if you just do this enough times, you'll get rid of all of them. It's just a question of patience now. And one other point I wanted to make, there's, and this is one of the little, I guess, little tricky things. I cut up, now that I have enough sandpaper, I cut up like 1,000 sheets of little pieces of sandpaper. Cut it 5 and 3. That's at least the way I've been doing it. Now, the thing is, this sandpaper, it may feel like it's still cutting at this point because we're trying to use this as filler, of course, and it feels at a very short, let's say after doing this part, I throw the sandpaper away and just get another piece. It seems like when you're sanding silver, more than anything else, it clogs up the paper no matter what you do, no matter how careful you are, or what medium you use. And I thought at one time when I used to use M600 it would be better. Yeah, well, maybe it was, but thanks to the EPA, we live in a wonderful state where you can't do anything without the government changing your diaper. It's unbelievable, and it gets worse every year. And you can't buy Sikkens M600 now. It's just crazy that you can't. But here's the thing I wanted to show is, at some point in time, you know, my flaws are coming right through. I can see them instantly. I don't have to, I can do this almost in the dark. But the sandpaper, now even though I've rinsed this sandpaper, you can see it still picks up, I don't know, like the paint really isn't dry, really totally dry yet. Well, maybe I should have let this sit up there another day. But I wanted to get going on this. I wanted to get this moving because I want to sand the other parts out. The other parts haven't been sanded at all. So, but the constant trick is just replace the paper every so often, and you don't have, every time you do a part, put a new little tab of paper in and you don't have this problem. Now once I'm done with the wet sanding part of each part, I got that old machinist ruler out, and I want to get back. I just have a sneaky feeling there's one set of fillets, and I don't say fillets, they're where there should be fillets, angles that are gonna, they must have some contamination or something in them. But we'll just keep doing exactly the same thing, filling it full of little pinholes with the a brand new number 11 blade. And this is all of the part that I guess years ago when I would get to this part. See, now here's a trick I want to show you. You get to this part, just move the sandpaper over the thickness of the machinist ruler. And in essence, you have a whole new cutting edge. You can get, and this really allows you to get in corners and edges and get that real nice edge on everything. Always break the edge on every part. And it's the detailing now, because this is the worst part. From this point on, it should be all a lot easier anyway. This part will definitely require 2 or 3 or 4 extra coats of material to bring it up. But what's happening is, and it's our fault, we've sanded through into spots that I guess we just were. I wasn't as careful as I thought I was, but it's given me the opportunity to show things that if everything just went perfectly, well, there wouldn't be much good information on a DVD. In fact, let me get this back. Now, if you really wanted to make the ultimate little tools, you can put contact cement on one side. So in effect, you have 600 wet and dry. Now, I haven't found that to be necessary, but that would be one way of getting in all these little edges and angles. And this is the most time-consuming small part, probably except for the fuselage. The wing goes pretty fast. We got some issues with the wingtip we're going to have to work on, and I want to detail out what the fixes are. Because if you can pick that up off the DVD, then the rest is easy. The rest is just doing it. I mean, the problem is, and here's what I always do at the end of when it's wet sanded, take that piece and just anywhere where you think there might be an area that it's real thin. In this case, I got a few of them. I want to scuff it. Then I'm going to get the CA. This is the worst part right here. I'm thinking this is going to come back to haunt me 10 times before this job is over. Where's my thin CA? Now the trouble is I can feel this with my hand that's a bad spot. And you could do this an infinite amount of times as long as you sand each coat. Again, what happens is the CA only goes into the raw wood where you've sanded through. It does not penetrate. And we got to work this one fillet. That looks fine. Now I always can feel it just, give it a minute or so to just kick off here. Just a thought. Imagine doing this when the plane is in one piece, and you wonder why some people just get so frustrated and they skip a lot of the detailing. Now we'll see after the next coat of silver, but I would be willing to bet this is going to take 3 or 4 more coats, both sanded out and painted, before it's going to be ready. Now what I think I'm going to do with this part, this is the only part that I have to do this to. I want to go outside and fight the elements for a minute so I can get a coat on here. Because it'll just let me see how bad it is. And while it's, once I spray this, I can't work on it anymore for that day. And that's a mistake, to start trying to get, at least for me it is, in these shop conditions. Once you spray for the day, you hang it up and you're done. But I would just like to know, this part needed a lot of work. But if I didn't have that, it wouldn't give me the opportunity, by the way, this is M600, it wouldn't give me the opportunity to really show some of these little things that, and after a while you can invent your own little tricks and tips. And by the way, this is the trick also. Don't get any of that in the coffee. Jeez. And I gotta be real careful out there that Mr. Red Tail Hook doesn't come and take my part. Now this is still a material we have in the gun it's not the decanted material, so. Snow, melt, go to Houston. Well, you can see the wind blowing the paint away. Oh man. We may not be able to do the wing out here. We'll have to improvise something if we get to that today. Well, one side looks pretty good and one side is still dry as a bone, so. Looks like we won. One side looks okay, the other side looks like it's going to need a lot more paint.
Now that part's going to have to dry up by the heating vent overnight, but in the meantime, we'll start working on the flaps, the elevators. We get the flaps and elevators over here drying, tail over here drying. These need a lot less work. These should go relatively quickly, but then I'll save the two big parts for last, of course, but it's still going to be that part. That at the end of this episode, that part's going to require the most work. Now where we knocked down that little high area there, you can see that's still bleeding its way through. Well, there's one way of making it better. Let's see if this is, I'm not sure this is going to work, but more than half of the time it does. Put some thin CA on a Q-tip here. Remember, the good news about the Q-tip is it only soaks into the raw wood. Now the trick is I got to let this dry, no kicker of course, and then go spray a couple of coats of silver on it. And what that should do is seal it so that the next coats of silver don't go soaking into the raw wood. Now this part, except for that, is really in pretty good shape. Now here's another thing. Every once in a while, I just clean out all this goop, clean it out, put about 5 drops of dish soap in some warm water. It seems like the warm water works a little bit better. Now I guess a good rule of thumb is every couple of parts, or in this case, just having some fresh water. You know you got enough soap in it if it bubbles up. If you see bubbles, and you really don't want to have too much soap in there. And I don't think it's a real critical formula, but it certainly makes it easier when it's right. Now in this case, we got some defects right up here. Let's see if I can show them. It's hard to show this. Some little I always look around at the part first for where I want to be careful. The little dry spot down in the corner. Little dry spot up here. Now, believe me, to most people, I'm not sure they would care about this, but I do, and that's all that matters to me. Now, here's the other thing. If you're sanding and you take the wet sandpaper, this is what frustrates a lot of people, and they're trying to use up a piece of sandpaper for 10 years. If you start on a flat part and you just do a little bit of sanding, flat parts, of course, are a little bit easier. And it shouldn't be an all-day thing to get the silver off. It's a good idea to replace the paper towels regularly. Now, we don't want to go any further down than that. In fact, that's probably right on the edge of being where I don't want to go. But you can see how many scratches and things that silver has already filled in. I just look down here. This little, see that little low spot? It's shiny. That's a defect. Little defect up here. We'll catch these on the next coat. Up here, right by the hinge pocket, there's a little shiny spot, and off in the corner. And that's pretty much what we're looking for, is just to find every little defect. And the only way I know to find those defects, or else you wind up filling everything up with pigmented paint in the final finish, and then as soon as you buff over there, boop, you buff through. Now the next thing to really test is once I get the other elevator sanded, test out our new jig. But what I think I have enough time in this session to get the flaps done too. Maybe I can get the 2 elevators, the 2 flaps, and then see how our jig works out before we move on. Well, before we move on to the next parts. But so far, it's just labor, and it's very redundant. But hey, I can watch Spitfire videos or Speed Channel. I watched boat racing this morning, of all things. Hey, we're ready to try out the illustrious rotisserie flap jig. All that's left here is for the final wipe down.
See how our new jig works. And believe me, the wind is blowing today. This would be very difficult to do with that wire thing that we were using. That's why I painted this, just to keep the dust off it. Well, it doesn't take long and you see the dry areas. Now I could spray this on as heavy as I like right now because this for sure will have to be sanded out. And I can get over some of the dry areas that this one here is really dry. Now this part's been drying for a few hours and I can see the dry spots, so it's very easy now. I can get a coat of clear on the dry spots. Anywhere that looks dry. And when that dries up, that'll just make it a lot easier to get the next sand out, that I won't be going right down into that raw wood immediately. And if you put that on selectively, what it's going to allow me to do is I'm not going to have to sand as hard on the areas that don't have the clear. But that'll certainly, that's the worst area right there. And we're just going to build it up with paint and block sand it down until we're happy with it. Now it's a constant battle, fighting the spots that you've sanded through or the spots that are light. And it's always a temptation to just go blow on a big giant coat of paint, but you know, in the final analysis, you know this is the winning formula. I do anyway. Now the next part is going to be the stab, and I'm going to use the same set of priorities on it. I want to sand it. I want to put a coat of silver on. If I still see dry spots, I'll hit those dry spots with clear. This is now a routine that just goes over and over and over and over until these parts have that very thin coat of silver on them. Now the good news is the weather's holding up great out there, so I'm going to try a couple more of these parts sanded out today. And if I get, again, if I get any really super dry spots like I had on the elevators, I'm going to give them a coat of clear. And at the end of this day, put another coat of silver on everything. Because we're going to be out of the shop tomorrow, so that'll give whatever we've painted an extra day to dry. But every time you go through this, and every time you go through this cycle, the parts just get nicer and nicer, and you're constantly picking up these little flaws. I feel like it's like I'm gaining on it, I'm gaining on it, I'm gaining on it. Every time I sand one of these parts out. Now I'm just doing the final little dry sanding on this now, and there's quite a few dry spots on this, so I may as well bite the bullet here and spray on a coat of clear, which is always the option. Every time I find a spot that I think I might be going through. I try to do it with dry sandpaper and then seal it with thin CA, of course, so that there's no chance, or very little chance, that any water is getting down into the wood. Now that was the one advantage of doing this with M600. It dried so quickly that you almost never had to even worry about it getting in hinge pockets or in raw wood areas. But again, thank our government for it. Now I'm going to slither out there and get some clear on this. And it looks like, the way the day is playing out, it looks like I'm going to have, well, a little more time. Maybe I didn't even get the flaps done. But again, I'm not rushing. I'm being very, very meticulous about looking for dry spots. And boy, if you understand that technology, what it allows you to do, it allows you to build almost any plane. Twin engine, bomber, competitive, nostalgia. Because you're not piling on the finish, making it tail heavy, and then chasing your tail around trying to lighten the plane up after it's way too late. And believe me, it's easier to do this now. These are the spots I CA'd, by the way. And I want to just dust them with sandpaper. But there's so many thin spots on this. I really think the whole plane could have had one more coat of clear, but I was really trying to push it. And of course, there's no downside to it. You can always put the clear on over the silver, under the silver, around the silver. But the one scenario not to fall for is to have so much paint on here that when you put the silver on, it looks perfect. Boy, if that happens, I want to have dry spots, because the dry spots are telling me, yes, I'm on the low side of the amount of paint that's going to ultimately be on here. Now, in just checking the weather, learned something very interesting. Today is going to be the warmest day of the next week. It's going back down into the teens. Oh man. I'll tell you, this winter is getting old this year. Anyway, I'm gonna try to get the flaps done too today, but there's no guarantee. And I'm gonna put the clear on this first. Clean it all up with M600. Get the clear on it. And then possibly what I can do is maybe, well, an hour or so later, we got about an hour and a half left. At the end of this day, put another coat of silver on everything. And we may want to change the game plan now that we know the weather's not going to cooperate again. This has been a winter. The winter of the Red Hawk. You can put an endless amount of clear silver, clear silver, clear silver, as long as you sand it off. Or sand most of it off, I should say. Or some of it off. Now some people say, you know, this is, oh, all that work. Oh, geez. When you think of how much enjoyment I get out of having a well-finished model, not even close. And granted, I miss all of those great Oprah shows. Ah. Now I can see the spots coming through that I'm really thin on. I really was pushing this a little, maybe pushing it a little bit too far even. But it's never a problem. We can always just put a little more on. Now that's got to dry. And when we do the flaps, we can put the silver on this too. Now this is the other little trick while I have this part, and I'm not sure you can see with the sunlight. Sunlight masks everything. You got to look under fluorescent light. I still have a dry spot there. A dry spot over there. Dry spot up there. And at the end of the day, we'll put a coat of silver on this. Put a little extra on the edge too. Just selectively touching up the little areas that are dry. Oh, it's getting cold out. I love that. Green Bay Packer stunt. Now, even though I haven't sanded the wing yet at all, I know there's 2 or 3 really bad spots here, and I can just load them up with paint so that I can sand that off. The joints. Joints are always a problem. Dry spot up there. Dry spot there. Won't matter much how much paint goes on the outer tip. Just paint the whole thing. We had some dry spots up here, if I remember right. Yeah, that tip was terrible. That was dry. That was dry. Whoa, look at that wind blowing. Oh, I love it. Don't you blow my plane. Whoa! Whoa! Glad we're not painting everything today. Now, because we're not going to have a shop day tomorrow, I can do the same thing here. Selectively touch up a couple of spots. And in the scoops are very dry. That's going to be a major thing. And I would always try to arrange my shop schedule so if I know I'm not going to work in the shop, I got something drying. Anyway, I can do this very selectively. Now these are the parts that have a coat of clear on them. Now, because it's so cold and the heat is on in the house, this stuff is really drying up exceptionally fast. Even this part's starting to look good. Green Bay stunt. Rebecca Farrell loves this. Just the thought of another week of cold weather is really making me angry. Just paint on and get inside and make up another cup of coffee. Now, I'm not sure how much more we're going to get done here because the the day is winding out. Boy, that, I'm telling you, that just makes me cold just looking at it. I'll warm up some coffee. Now, the truth is, I remember as a kid, 1961 or 62, I think, going to the Nats and looking at all the beautiful planes and thinking, wow, I'd really like to have one of those someday. Something that looked like it was made out of shiny plastic. Well, you know what? That was a long time ago. And I still want it. And I'm determined. I really want this plane above others to be just exceptional in every way. I guess I want everyone to be that way, but this one in particular because of who we're building it for, who the build is for. And from this point on, I'm going to get extra fussy. When I do the wing, the fuselage, I'm just going to pull out all the stops. I don't even care the way the weather is out there anyway. I don't care if this is going to take an extra month. I just want this to be as good as I can make it. Now I'm looking real close and I can see already that the flaps are no different than the rest. These are going to need extra coats of clear, so I may as well not even fool around. When I get this sanded out, I'll put a coat of clear on, wait an hour or so, and put this up. If this day goes on that long, I have no idea. But I know one thing for sure, a lot of people do not enjoy this. I just feel such a sense of accomplishment when I get a coat of silver sanded out. I just feel like, boy, oh boy, is that. And every time I do it, it gets just a little nicer than the time before. It's so predictable. Now the flaps, of course, are easy, they're simple to do. When we get to the fuselage, I want to start that sand out with maybe first thing in the morning. But see, now the other thing is, while the day that I'm going to do the fuselage, all this other dope will be drying. I'm starting to work that where something's always drying. And from this point on, there will always be something drying. Or something that can benefit by having that extra day or two of dry time. Well, the only thing left to do here, and actually the flaps did sand out very nice. The only thing left to do, spray on a coat of clear, and I think that's all we're going to get. And well, I'm not sure, and if I'm going to put the silver on, because I want to let it dry at least an hour in between, or I'll do it later on in the day. I need to figure this out because a lot of things going on here at the same time, and tomorrow's an off day. Now I thought I'd tough this out. These parts, these are the ones that have the selectively cleared, and I thought I really wasn't going to do this, but you can tell I'm excited. And boy, that's the sun is going down in the east here, but that makes me glad I got this paint on today. Now, it's really important for two reasons, and it's not one reason. It's not that tomorrow's a holiday for us. It's that we're going for about a week of where it's really going to go down. I mean, it's freezing now, but it's really supposed to get cold in the teens again. So, and it really is. It's horrible being out here when it's that cold. This flap here I can see is way drier than the other one. So I'll just put some extra material. It won't matter. It's going to get sanded right off. I think they're both pretty dry. I realize how dry they are. Just have to see how this dries up. See if it's our lucky day here. Oh, that wind is blowing. Well, this is a pretty busy day, pretty hectic schedule of things. Looks like we got everything done. And it's coming up on that time that's the most important time of every day. It's coming up on pizza time. Well, there's all that's left of a day of sanding silver. The telltale sign that we've been sanding silver. Now tonight, while all this is drying up, we're all dressed up in our go to watch Stacy mode. I usually don't take the camera to these performances, but tonight will be a special night, and we're going to hang out with our friends Pete and Marianne, and we're going to see Stacy Rose perform. And needless to say, the dope will be drying, and Stacy will be performing, and tomorrow again is a no modeling day, so this will really give us a lot of diversion from well, from the daily routine. And it's always fun going over to the city and watching these performances, but I don't get that many of them on camera. She usually plays at least once a month. If you've never seen Stacy Rose perform, you get a few minutes of what these musicians and young people do in the evening in New York City and Manhattan. Should be a lot of fun. Where's that dog? Karen's afraid. She does MapQuest. She has a GPS with her. She's scared to get lost in New York City.
I used to get up before 6.
This is the problem with having a GPS system that's built in. You got a key in the place.
It's a long day. It's a long day.
You just can't put in Houston Street.
Yeah, I just give you bullshit. So GM says they don't want to go to the union. Tell them the union you got to take a pay cut.
That's the Statue of Liberty right there. Oh yeah, I guess you can see it. There's nothing quite as exciting as going to Manhattan at night. There it is. And the skyline. Oh my God. The bridges. Yeah, who would have thunk it?
Hoboken was bad enough, but to see I think it's in high school. Maybe down about.
There's never traffic here. What are you worried about?
Yeah, right.
It's like living in Houston.
He's on his video. 2 trains into the city. Dark bar, which is what they all are.
It's a seedy, dark bar, exactly.
This is the Broome Street East, and then 3 blocks we hit east.
You're so calm.
You're losing your temper, Pete. Relax.
Wendy would be screaming by now.
By now, I'd be biting the steering wheel.
Oh, Pete's very.
Oh!
Yeah, from now on, whenever we go in the city, Pete, you get to drive. Wendy can drive in the suburbs.
Famous is Katz's Deli.
Starts with Katz's
World
on
famous
Houston Street.
Katz's Deli. There you go, girls. Hulkamania. Look who's waiting in line. Karen and Marianne.
Son and bring him home.
Dreaming, spaceships landed, Messiah's come and gone, but we left them stranded. Point our fingers, judge our friends. Love lingers with us in the end. I see you right, and I try and cope, 'cause I realize where there is no shadow and sunrise, there is hope. I can't see it. I believe in hope. I need it now. I need it now. We're all sleeping, boys whispering. Where's people come from? Nobody's listening. Point our fingers and judge our friends. We're the here and now, baby. In the end, I see your eyes, and I try and cope, 'cause I realize where there is no shadow and sunrise, there is hope. I can't see it. I believe in hope. I need it now. Divisive as we are, duplicitous thus far, disposable of the world in which we live. What I wouldn't do, what I wouldn't give for you. I can't see it. I believe it. How I need it I can't see it. I believe it. How I need it now. How I need it now.
I got one more. I wanted to thank you again for being here tonight. And there's a mailing list if you're not already on it. I do have copies of the CD for sale for those of you who don't have the new record. And we have another show coming up really, really soon at the Mercury Lounge, which will be a full band extravaganza. And it's February 2nd at 7 o'clock. And again, I'm very happy that you're here, so stick around and jump in, which I said.
Where's the show on the 2nd?
Oh, Mercury Lounge. Yes. Mercury Lounge, February 2nd at 7 o'clock. So just see a lot of you there.
What's the cover going to be?
For you, $50. It's going to be $8, actually. If you want to know the truth. So we're going to do something a a bit unorthodox. It's not like that crazy, but we're gonna end on a brand new song that no one's ever heard. Brand new. Which might mean if we screw up, we might want to do it again. That probably won't happen, but if it does, I hope you'll be understanding. You will be understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you. This one's called Sunny. Hold on. Oh.
Yeah.
You guys ready? Are you ready already? I know.
What are we doing again?
Sunny. I don't wanna jump the gun. I don't wanna let you down. Haven't had a lot of fun these days. My angels haven't been in town. Gonna smile through the crowd and cloud. Dance the funeral march in my head. I know how to weep without a sound. I ain't afraid 'cause I'm already there. Sound funny, but I used to be sorry. When it rained, I would shine. Oh, you can dance that day. If I used to be sunny when it rained, shine, 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 shine. I don't wanna hold my horses. I don't wanna take a nap. I don't wanna wish my life away. Maybe the worst is over now. Gonna smile through the crowds and clouds. Dance the funeral march in my head. Oh, let it drown in the river. Ain't afraid 'cause I'm back from the dead. Sound funny, but I used to be sunny. And the rain, I shine. Oh, you can dance that day. If I used to be sunny when it rained, shine, 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 shine. All the diamonds, all the gold, won't warm you when you come. Used to shine like a paint on a new car. I would walk away like a North Star as in a bad day. If I used to be sunny when it rained, I would shine. Oh, you can dance in a bad day. If I used to be sunny when it rained, shine, 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 shine. I don't wanna jump the gun. I don't wanna let you down.
I have Stacy here when I get dizzy.
Do you want me to take one?
Jack ingenuity. That's
So Pete, Marianne, this is the truth. Pete pulls into the mobile station down here, and he tells the guy behind the counter, he says, "I'm parking my car here for an hour, and if I come out and the radio's missing, I'm gonna kill you."
I see a tow truck.
The guy believed him, and then I went over to him and I said, "Hey, sir, don't screw with him. He's a criminal. Can't you tell? Didn't you see his picture in the paper?"
It wouldn't be a tow truck. It'd be a hijack.
Oh, they got my limo here anyway.
That's good.
The hell with Pete's limo. I'll take this one. True story. Turn to Pete. Turn down your energy. I'll have the Red Hawk come and bite your ass. I want the thermostat up tonight. I'm freezing my ass off. Hey, Marianne, did I tell you a Red Hawk got a pigeon right in our driveway? No. Right while Karen and I were standing there. There's Pete's car. I bet the wheels are missing.
Oh, but the steering wheel.
Did this guy guarantee? Did he guarantee nothing's going to be missing? Oh, man. That's what I like about being in organized crime. Get to park in a gas station. Look at this. You believe this?
Change the license plate.
You go on the other side of the car, there's no doors. Oh, I'm ready. Pete, what a night. What a night.
I used to live, I got to stop by.
So I want to see the guy. Oh, you're going out the wrong way. I wanted to see the look on that guy's face when we stole the car. The guy would probably come out, hey, sir, you're stealing a car.
He'd probably come out and say, who gives a shit? I got my money. Who cares?
I told him to keep an eye on my car.
Oh, man, I love being in organized crime. Pete, I'm telling you, nothing better than being in the mafia.
Yep.
Nothing.
I got to go to
Oh, we're
East.
going to get down memory lane.
Where are we going? To your old apartment?
Old tenement house in the 4th floor tenement house.
Look at this, the cops are out in full force tonight. The guys are stealing cars.
See? So you that
Pete, a bunch of us were here. This is a true story. In Greenwich Village one night, a pickup truck pulled up to a motorcycle that was chained. You know, it had chains around the wheels. They picked up the bike and the chain, put it in the back of a pickup truck. 30 seconds later, they were down the road.
Okay.
Just like it was a toy.
Do you know what? In fact,
It's 5-story.
This is your old building right here?
Building.
Wow.
404?
All the gangsters lived in there, huh?
Your mother carried you up and I had a heat.
Wow.
You're lucky. It was from
World famous. What I mean world famous, Katz's Deli.
married at 17.
Send a salami to your boy in the army.
That's it.
That is it right there, baby.
But she was a child. Very, very
I feel safer already.
He used to be outside at
Check this
I
out.
see why he's got
Just do a U-turn. Yeah, just do a
a
U-turn right on a main road. No problem. That's probably Ticer.
Yeah, every lighting store is in one spot. Every jewelry store is in one. Italian pastry.
Ferrara's is Italian pastries from 1892.
See that?
World famous Ferrara's.
Make a list
I
of
thought it was
what
Ferrari's.
This is Little Italy, straight down here. Off to the right.
Little Italy. Oh, I would have never guessed it.
you'll pick it up. I'll tell you what.
And then to the left.
Look at this. Here's the famous Italian juggling act.
You got the Nico, and gelato and stuff like that.
Gelato.
Where are we?
Just past Ferrari's.
We're just in Little Italy here, Chickie.
Italy. You're too nice to go.
Well, that ends the great trip
You know
to Manhattan to see Stacy Rose perform. What a wonderful adventure.
Yes, it
I'm a
was.
nice guy.
And all this while the paint is drying. I got paint drying by a heating vent at home. Lucky me.
See that?
Yeah, we had a really nice night last night, touring New York City and some of our friends' old neighborhoods and stuff. And of course, one of Stacy's shows. This is from our friend Art Rosberry, who went to the bike show with us, and he's looking to buy a bike. He can't decide what, and he wants my opinion. Well, my opinion is buy any bike. Just get out on the road here. You don't need to have an expensive bike. He hasn't had a bike in a while, so I'm trying to get him interested again. And since he's spoken to Mike Kajeski and among other people, they've convinced him he's got to go out and buy a bike. This is one of his choices of, it's a Valkyrie, a Honda.
Now, I wanted to show this on video. This is one thing we have to do every year. Karen has some silverware that's been given to her by a good friend who passed on. And we have this stuff that we bought at a trade show, Quicksilver it's called. And what you do, you put it in boiling water, and there's a little bit of a plate that goes in here. And you let everything sit in there for a couple minutes anyway. And this is why they don't make Gorhams anymore. This is why Gorhams is out of business, because this works better. In fact, the one piece we took out already, you let it sit there, look at the difference. And there's no polishing at all. You just let it sit in there, and then you flip it over, and there's a little, whatever it is that does this job. It's pretty cool. And it takes all the black oxidation right off. It's amazing. And I thought when I bought this stuff at the trade show a couple of years ago, it was going to be junk every year. This saves us a couple hours, because what we used to do in the past every year we used to just pretty much sit down and watch TV in the shop and sit with it and use up a tub or two of Gorhams to get our silverware. Once a year we had to polish it. Now, it's really a miracle. I wish you could dip a plane in there and get the same finish. And we still don't have any birds. I'm just so depressed. Since that hawk's been around, we have lost our birds, I guess temporarily, I hope.
While we're polishing up Karen's silver and waiting for that stuff to do its magic, got some pictures here from Lee Concannon. He's got his new shop all sorted out. And here's the most important thing, a big TV to watch Windy DVDs. That's what works for me. So you know what you need is a connection for Windy DVDs, a connection for Windy DVDs, a connection for Windy DVDs. Now there's what you really need, is the gigantic electric heater. Boy, do we need that. Pond is frozen solid again this morning. We're out there for a half an hour chopping away and then doing silverware, and oh my God, what a mess. Just a mess. Look at this, he's got the gear block installation on something. Very cool, Lee. I'm impressed. But this impresses me the most is that giant electric heater he's got. Could use that down here today.
Now, Bill Allen sent me this picture, reminiscent of Buddy Weeder having too many deer on his property. They apparently invade his house and steal all the food out of the bird feeders along with the squirrels. Anyway, Bill, we know exactly the problem. What you need is a red hawk. A red hawk can take care of that problem. No, they just pick up a deer and carry him away. By the way, I still got those feathers out in the driveway and I still have no birds. It's amazing how smart the birds are. Now, Bill's been watching some Windy videos and he's kind of happy about it. He's been complimentary about it, and the real compliment is he keeps watching more. Now, we also got some nice photos from Ray Dory. You may remember Ray Dory shot some really nice footage of us. Got our flights for us on DVD, so we really do appreciate having these still photos to add to our collection. And here's the great news. Once we get these on DVD, Kenny Stevens' ship, another nice one. Sparky's ship had a chipmunk-like paint job on it. Now, this fellow won advanced, but I don't remember exactly what his name is, Spanish fella. One of the guys flying the ever-popular Yashenko Sharks that have pretty much single-handedly changed the whole way the event runs. I think this is the guy from Cuba, but I'm not sure. Randy Smith's ship. And my personal choice, Mikey Palco. Mikey, first trip to the top 10 Palco, certainly not his last. Guaranteed. The concourse winner, Phil Granderson. Some pictures of the top 5. And I really appreciate that Ray is passing some of these on, because the truth is I only have 3 or 4 pictures of the top 5. I don't have any other than a poster one. Now, just as an example, this one is really good. This one's better than the one I have of the poster. Kind of like that one better, but we're certainly going to hang on to all of them. That's for sure. And one of Karen's favorites, Karen and Mrs. Taffender. Mickey's hanging out with Karen, and of course Shelley in the foreground. Some more of the top 5. Orestes Hernandez, the winner, 2 years running. Some of the other finalists: Derek Berry, Bill Rich. I think this was the picture they posed of all the people from Bill's district in Florida. And this is nice too. If you ever want to know whose name is on the Walker Cup, he took various pictures from all different angles to see all the people that are on the Walker Cup. So if we ever have to reference it, we pretty much got everybody's name. That was pretty nice. Another nice photo of Orestes here. Our favorite son, Kent Ticer, the Ticer man. Frank McMillan's beautiful ship, very nice. Number 6. Another one of the ARFs that are very popular. I'm not sure if that's a Yashenko one. Several of the other people make ARFs. One of the P40s. And here's Mikey Palco talking about his electric that he's been developing over the years. As I go through these, here's another one of the Walker Fly-Off. Ray, I really do appreciate these photos, believe me. Hey, and Karen just reminded me what a great time we had last night with Pete and Mary Ann. And we really do like cruising around the city pretending we're gangsters and stuff, but we're really not. Don't get a feeling that he's really in the mafia. He's not really in the mafia. Actually, Pete is our lawyer on the real estate deal, just for anybody who doesn't know, or somebody that might be interested in that kind of thing. One of the attorneys that's kept me out of jail for my whole life. Here's a nice picture of Big Art. Some nice pictures of Appearance Rose. Oh, we always enjoy pictures. You never have too many pictures. And the neat thing, once you get them on video, you can share them with the world. You don't have to fool around or anything. You can share them with the world. More top 5 pictures. Ray, I'm glad you took all those top 5 pictures, because believe me, I only had a few. And when I made the poster up, I wish I had all of these when I made the poster. Maybe or maybe wouldn't. See, one of the things I liked about the model, the wheels. The wheels slipped by a few people, but not me. Some more pictures, canopy detailing. And it's funny how in the top 5 pictures, and I have 18 of them sitting around the house, poster size, you'll look and there's always somebody that's not smiling, or somebody whose fly is open, or they're something. But it's hard to get a picture where everybody's in focus. Everybody, hey, here's Bill and Ryan. And of course our favorite son, Ryan, my adopted grandson, the senior winner. Can't really tell who that was taken off. Must be Kent, because that's my toolbox. That's the Ferrari toolbox. Again, I apologize for not knowing this guy's name. He's been to my house too. This is what's silly. He's been to my house. Now, this is a picture I keep on my shop wall, because this was an incredible visit. These guys came on a big stormy weekend, and they had the worst weather. You couldn't imagine. We couldn't even get them back to the motel. One guy crashed. We fixed his plane here. We couldn't get people back to the motel. This fella here has since passed away, but they have, I'm sure, here's our friend right here. I am sure they will never forget that visit to Wendy's. That probably was 6-8 years ago. And we're pleased to see that he's gone on to become a good competitor. Keith Trossel and Charlie Reeves with their matching old-time stunt planes. Very nice picture. Some of the trophies that they were awarding. Bill Rich, the Pampa president, who's done, I think, an outstanding job of handling the Pampa business over the last, well, it's over a year now. And the man that was voted handsomest man at the 2008 Nats by a unanimous vote of 1, me. Anyway, we really do appreciate having those photos, and we're going to be sending Ray out a super package of windy goodies that he can enjoy. Ray, thank you so much, and thanks for those cakes over the years. Karen and I are getting fat eating those king cakes. And we have to move on to the next step of assembling. This is a carbon tank that's going to go out to Scott Dinger. A little token of thanks for all the stuff that he's done for us. The welding, making up mufflers. You need any mufflers for side exhaust, rear exhaust? Check in with Scott Dinger. Got some good stuff. Now today, since I wasn't working in the shop, doing no sanding or anything, I thought I'd just go back over my collection of sketches here and finalize one, because what I want to do, the whole idea here is, these are just rough sketches. I started out, and then what I do is I flip the page back to trace out sketch 2, so like doing a cartoon. Once I'm satisfied I got the aspect ratios close, then I can fine-tune it, of course. And so once I get to the point where, maybe where I'm satisfied with it, then I'm going to sketch out a real drawing that I want to make copies of. Oh, it took, well, quite a long time. The next step is the next time I'm out by the library or wherever they have a Xerox machine, I'm going to try to get some copies of this, like 10, 15 copies, and I can start sketching out with colored pens and colored pencils what some of my ideas for paintwork are. But we're a couple of weeks away from that, but never too soon to get started. Karen is very proud of her silver job. She says she should get the Concourse Award for this. Actually, that came out pretty good, Karen.
3 hours of work.
3 hours. And what she found out was there were some spots, especially in the handle and in the castings, that don't come out as good as the flat surfaces. And of course, what material did you find worked real well?
Gorums.
Gorums! Hey! Gorums, the material used to defend against Red Hawks. Well, we really had a wonderful day, a truly wonderful day. And we're going to cap it off tonight. It's John DeTavio's 86th birthday, and we're all going to celebrate up by Franco's. Now, I took the feeder in tonight because I was thinking, you know, I feel bad that the birds are afraid to come into the yard now. I don't know what to do, but we're hoping in a couple of days they kind of, maybe they're going to forget about that poor hawk. I don't know. And I've been dreaming about paintwork, different paint jobs, and I keep coming back to a very simple paint job. Except, well, as you can imagine, my head is spinning, and I need to make those copies. I need to get the staples in the next day or so, get some copies going. And I keep thinking, what is it that I really like? What appeals to me? And every time I make a list, or even from the motorcycle show, the things that seem to appeal to me overall, these very simplistic, bold colors, big broad areas. And of course, what I don't like, the things I don't like. I don't like to have to answer the phone on the way to go out to John's party. Let me get the phone. And for somebody that may not know, John DeTavio and I have known each other pretty much since I was a young kid. And that was a lot of years ago. And I never thought back then the handsome devil had lived to be 86 years old, but he's chugging along like an old steam engine. It's unbelievable. Just going out to parties every night's got to go. I got to get more work done on my plane.
2 in a row.
This is eating into my quality sanding silver time.
Bye, Wendy.
Look at this handsome devil all dressed up. Karen was gonna break him a birthday cake.
You okay now?
What are we gonna get for
Yeah, you got 2 menus over there. Yeah, I already know what I want. But yeah, I'm gonna have maybe either the baked ziti or the lasagna. That's it. It's very light. I'm not that hungry.
So, John, what do you have to say to John Cafaro?
Oh, I don't know. He sent me a card.
He sent you a card?
Oh, he sure did.
What do you have to say to Elliot?
Elliot, your airplane's coming slow but sure.
Don't leave home without it, huh?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I got the wing all done. The
all
flaps
set?
are done, yeah. The fuselage is built. Now I got to fit the wing in and I got to put the controls into it.
All right. Richard Strager's in brilliant silver.
Oh yeah, it's straight. It's looking good.
You're gonna paint it the same way, or same paint job?
Same way.
You get those decals you were looking for?
Yeah, but the decals right now are not exactly what I wanted.
That from Ruben's friend, or?
Yeah, he doesn't have the program.
I thought you already had it out on a computer.
He doesn't have the program that the other guy had.
Oh.
The other guy that I got the decals was in North Carolina. This guy was the guy that Kent knew.
Right.
He appears to be out of business because I called him several times.
Oh,
Nothing returns the call.
yeah. So now he's got to put everything back in the computer?
No, this other guy, he has a different program. I got decals from him, but they're not exactly what I wanted.
Okay.
Happy birthday, dear Johnny. Happy birthday to you.
Hey! Speech.
26.
27, he's lying.
Yeah,
Blow the
27.
candle, Johnny.
Okay.
Come on.
What do you
Talk
want?
is cheap.
Blow the candle out. Make a wish.
I already did.
Whoa! What a great night at Franco's, a great birthday party with our good friend forever, John DeTavio. 86 years old. Can you believe that? No, this is a familiar sight every morning. That birds are still scared to death of that hawk, I think. It's amazing, as days have gone by, I thought those feathers would blow away. They're still out there. So maybe I should go get a rake and clean that up. I don't know. Now today I can finish up Scott Dinger's tank before I do anything. I want to make sure that's clean inside, of course. Got to do M600, got to glue on the back, pressure check it, check for leaks. I want to get the staples today and get copies made of my my final drawing. And everything is drying up over there, nice. One by one we're going to start finalizing these parts. Now remember, some of these parts are going to need 1 coat more, some are going to need 3 coats more. So from this point on, I'm going to start being very careful about how many more coats do I need. And some of these are almost ready for the final sand out. Some of them still have flaws in them, but we're just going to keep working the system until we're happy with everything. And especially, we're looking at a week here, a solid week of below freezing, so there's no rush. Now on this part, the first part we're starting with today, you can see the low spots, and what I want to do, I want to get it to where it's as flat as can be. It starts out looking like this, and it's relatively rough, and part of this is because we did this in cold weather, and it just dried a little lumpy on there. In warmer weather this would not have dried that way. This side's not so bad, but there's a dry spot right in the middle there, and I'm trying to see, yeah, you can see it there. But ultimately it's all going to sand out like this. It's just a matter of time. Now this morning, another thing, it's so cold in the shop that I had to use this little electric heater, but it's actually doing a good job of keeping the water warm for me. So one small step for mankind here. But I'm gonna, there's very little chance I'm going to get anything painted today, and because it's really cold again. It just goes back and forth into the teens and into the 20s. But it's not a big deal if these parts wait a couple extra days. It just doesn't matter. And actually, it's doing us a favor because we had a rest day. We had a day of non-modeling, let's put it that way. And now we're back to, I think realistically, I can get most of this sanded, but not painted today. But we'll have to see how it goes. But here's the whole key. These parts, when they're done, from this point on, I want to see really nice smooth finish. I don't want to see any of that. You can see the difference here and see the difference here. And this is just, at this point in time, just a question of a lot of labor, just plain old labor. Now you can see I'm trying just to leave enough material on there that I have a little bit of a shine. Just enough to have a little bit of a shine, and we're ready to go on to the next part. Now one by one I'm getting these parts. What I hope, I wish it would just go above freezing. It's just so much better painting out there, but just gonna have to see how many phone calls we get today and how many little things we have to take care of. Anyway, these parts, one by one, they're starting to get into that final. And by the way, this is one little spot where I started to sand through. Just put the thin CA in there, dry sand it. I bet that'll cover up. And this little heat thing isn't hurting because it's just keeping the parts. I'm guessing the water being warm it seems like it's sanding out really nice today. Now when I'm starting, I'm always trying to look for, as an example, here's a dry spot right down here. Let's see if we can get that on. You see that little dry spot? So I want to be real careful. I don't want to sand, if possible, I don't want to sand back down into the tissue. But even if I do, and I'll do that part of it first, even if I do, the trick is just seal it with some thin CA anywhere you go through. And that usually will be, well, for me, you see what happens is the thinner you're trying to make the silver, in our case, we're using it for filler, we're eliminating a whole slew of talc and all that stuff. So we're going to tend to go through a lot more than if we just pile it on. Now the point is, and what I wanted to make is, now if I candle this and I see I have a dry spot there, let me candle it, let me see if I can candle it. Or if I can feel that it's rough, in this case I feel that it's rough, I don't want to go any further. What I want to do is take a dry paper towel, and this is where this heat is actually being my friend. It's drying us up a lot quicker than if, believe me, it's about 60 degrees in here right now. I always have handy the thin CA. Now that's really, now I've got that sealed. So when I'm sanding over here, if I happen to go over and catch it, I'm not going to go through and have a raw wood spot again. Now once that dries, give it a minute or so, then I can just take, and I keep a piece of dry sandpaper, just to touch it, just fuzz it. And of course I'm being real careful on all the edges and all the corners here. Now it looks like, other than that spot, that's the only one we got a dry spot up here we got to deal with. But if I could get across the point that you're constantly looking, and at some point in time we're going to spray a coat of silver. In fact, with the next coat we're going to start putting that highly pigmented silver on here so that the last coat will be really thin. From this point on, I think we're only going to need relatively thin coats. But even if we do, if there's never a problem that you can't sand it back down and put another coat on it. Each time you do, this part will get more and more error-free and rid of all these little I call them imperfections for lack of a better word. And we will get these parts perfect before we move on to the next step. Now some of the smaller parts like the tip weight box, they're pretty much ready for their last coat, so I'm going to transition the material over into the spray gun that the next coat will have the highly pigmented silver, because and then I'll start trying to spray the coats as light as I can. I think this part's pretty much ready for its last coat. But one by one, we're going to go through the parts, and of course at the end, some of them are going to need, where there'll be only one or two parts that need another coat sanding, another sanding, and another coat. But it's not equal. The thing that I wanted to stress is there's not an equal, like a piece of saran wrap or monocoat going over the wing. There's spots where the wood is a little not perfect, and there's places where there's very little amount of paint. But then at the end, to get that very thin coat of silver on everything, and that heater is really helping. Sure would have thought of that earlier. And this is one of the other things that every time I work these parts, getting in those little hinge pockets, little edges, little horn pockets. Now this part is unique. The whole part looked like it would be almost ready for the last sand out, except up here you can see we got what looked like a couple of fish eyes. I'm guessing what's happened there is I was holding a part that way when I had some schmutz on my hand. Now whatever there's a fish eye, pretty simple way to get around it. We'll sand this out, and if it needs another coat, you just put on another coat, sand it out, another coat, sand it until that's sealed up. Another way to do this would be, if you had Brodak primer in the gun, you could just spritz on just a little bit there. That might or might not be an easy way to do this. And if you had a scale model, of course, you could do that to the whole plane. But right now we want that absolute thin coat. Now let me just show this, because this is the bad part. Towel. And you can see that's pretty much sanded out, where you got a low spot here, a low spot here, a little divot there. But basically this part is going to sand out, and this is one of the parts that's going to need maybe one extra coat. But the other part doesn't have this fingerprint on it, so it'll probably need one less coat. And I don't want to put on any more. Once I see a smooth, no defects silver finish, I'm ready for starting to lay out the trim on a model then. And once I get those copies from Staples, and I'm going to get them today when I go out, what I want to have is, I want to start, I've had ideas in my mind, I've had ideas that I've eliminated right off the bat, and I'm wavering toward trying to make it very conventional and very conservative, nothing too radical. Yeah, this side isn't, well, it's wet, but that pretty much shows, that silver shows every defect in the material. Slight change of plan, slight change of plan. Now what happened, Karen's been listening to the weather, and even though it's about 30 degrees right now, it's still below freezing. It's supposed to snow for the next 2 days, or good chance of snow. So I wanted to get some paint, and this is the material I've been saving. It's decanted with the extra pigment. And you can see how nice that covers and how nice it flows out. And with the decanted material, you can get a much finer coat. And I definitely don't have to go back like I do when I know I'm going to do some heavy sanding. That covers real nice. Now it would be real nice if I could guarantee that I'm not going to get snowed on here in the next day or so. But that truly is not happening. And it looks like we're certainly coming up on a point where this may be there's a dry spot there. If it's not the last coat, it's going to be next to the last. Here's another dry spot. As it starts to dry, I can just see the dry spots. Now, the way these little parts are drying up gives me a lot of confidence that, well, I guess we'll be sanding that part out. We got this dripping. That's why they make old clothes. You'll never even see it when it's done. I know I got that one bad spot right around the horn. That's an issue. That looks like it might need one more coat right around the horn. One more sand out possibly. That was really rough in the beginning. It's right, I'm thinking one more coat. I can see one way I could have made this better is by cutting back these edges so I can get down to the hinge line, or making the little supports longer. I get one or the other, or both. Now these parts, these were really rough. Earlier in the day I was wondering how many more coats they're going to need. I'm thinking we're one coat away. One dry spot right there. Now I look real careful. That's that dry spot on a trailing edge. So that the next sand out I can just have a little extra material there. And we still have the constant problem. See what happens? It's not quite over freezing yet. And we're just, look how thick that ice is. It's like 1.5 inches thick. Amazing. Back into the warm shop it is. Oh. I wanted to show this. Just watch the light travel right down the flap. I'm candling it and you'll see right there. Right there you can see a dry spot. And this is the whole trick, is when you can identify, see that dry spot right where the light is shining? And the way I've been getting away with this is because I really have a thin amount of paint on here. See, I'm sanding right through. Normally you would have 2 or 3 more coats of filler or some kind of clear or something on there. So the fact that I'm sanding through in spots every time I sand, it's telling me I'm really at the lower amount of clear that I want to put on there, and the lower amount of filler or with silver or whatever. But as soon as I see I have a dry spot like that, I fix it before I go any further. I'll candle it, find the spot. Now, what happened is before I was doing it this way, what I would do is I'd go outside right now and spray a coat of clear there. But what it does, then I'd have to put this aside to dry for a while. By doing it this way, in a matter of a minute or so, I can go right back and finish sanding it apart. But just a minute or so, and then that'll be ready. And I've got a dry spot down here somewhere I've got to look for. But it's that constant picking away that each time I do this, it gets nicer and nicer without building up that giant amount of weight. That's the hardest part of all, is to get rid of the weight. Even that little dry spot down there along the edge. I want to do this one surface at a time. Now I've looked up here and there's a little spot up here, but it's the same thing over and over. It's just, as I said, I may as well answer the phone before I go any further. Let me get the phone. No, I thought I'd mention one other little tip. What really should happen, and I haven't been doing it. In the course of doing it, I'm just leaving out this step. What I really should do is about 10 minutes before I go to work on something, you should put the sandpaper in here and let it get wet, and I'll show you what happens if you don't. And I just, where the hell is it now? Oh, over here. It takes a gouge out of the flap is what happens. That sandpaper, when it's stiff, it's like a razor blade, and it can catch an edge, catch a hinge pocket. Now when it does, I have two choices here. I can fill this up with thick CA, which is what I'm going to do. Or I could use nitro stain, which I really don't want to do because then I got to wait for it to dry. But either way, I can put a little bit of thick CA in there and just sand it out. Next time I sand silver, that should come right out. But the same as putting a fingernail mark in it. Up here you can see what happens. It looks like, this is where the thin CA is. It looks like it's got an area where there's no silver, but it's as smooth as can be. And it's sealed. So when I see areas like this is another one I had to put thin CA in. Then I know, as an example, I just wanted to show this, because these are the things, if you really want to do this, let's get under the light here. There we go. You see the spots that are CA'd, how they look flat or whatever? Yeah, they look like they're rough. But if you run your hand over it, and I would always tell people, never substitute running your hand right there. See that spot there? Well, yeah, when I put my hand over it, cannot feel that at all, means that's probably going to be fine when I put the next coat of silver on this. Now, whenever I have one of these repairs like this that has to be, I guess, dealt with, the very last thing before I'm going to put it back in the jig to paint it is just to dust sand it. Back and forth a couple different directions. Not wet sand it, because I don't want to take a chance that any water is going to get down in there. Now that's reasonable, that's reasonable. Go over, this one here feels still a little rough. But boy, here's the thing. Once you know you can do this and put that light finish on a plane, and I felt really bad today. Rich Oliver called before when the phone rang. That was Rich. And what had happened is he put on a Brodak dope with a big automotive gun, thinking he'd get more on in one coat, and it melted all his ink lines and decals, and it made a mess. So, and like myself, Rich never minds passing on the information that may save you some grief. Now, this one here is still a little bit, because we're going to get ready. As soon as I get the other flap done, I got one flap done, I want to get out there. Again, we're anticipating more snow. Now that's dry. Now, once I'm done with a dry piece of sandpaper, see it has all those little like spots where it picks up, and I've even gone at one point in time and tried to sand the whole model dry, and it just used too much sandpaper. And then now if I soak that piece in there and I let it sit, in 5 minutes what'll happen, I can just take my hand and that stuff will come right off, and I'll have what amounts to be a new piece of sandpaper. Now, as an absolute last resort, if all else fails and you stick your fingernail in a part, well, this is the last resort. Now, I really don't like to use this at all, but sometimes it's just on an edge or in a spot, and you could put a tiny little spot, a little, very small amount. But never, ever think this adds any strength. It's prone to pull up also if you put the plane out in the sun. Never try to make a fillet out of it. Never try to, in some way, make a part stronger by adding this. This is strictly cosmetic. It's like putting I don't know, the hardest to manage part of a paint job. If you have a lot of this on your plane, those are the parts that'll bubble, that'll lift. So, but what happened here, and I wanted to put this on, is I tried to fix this edge with thick and thin CA, and it still wasn't coming out perfect. So while I'm sanding the other flap, I'll just leave this little tiny amount, but I wouldn't want any more than that. I wouldn't want to just like in the old days, I'd trowel it on, oh yeah, block sand it out, and then wonder why I had a 75-ounce plane. Now if you look right here, what you see is right here. This is a spot where I put my fingernail, and I try to trim my fingernails, but it's hopeless. I'm always sticking them in something. Right there, what I'm going to do is sand the part out first. I'll sand that area out first, and I'll sand it dry because what I want to do is seal it with thin CA first. But that would be a little candidate. Let me just show that again. Now, a lot of people don't, they say, well, that's going to be on the bottom, nobody will see it anyway. Well, maybe, but I'd like to fix even the slightest thing that I can. And this one's full of dry spots. You can see the dry spots down here, how rough that is. Well, this one will require a lot more work than the other one. But it doesn't matter because each time I do this, it's going to get nicer and nicer and nicer and nicer. Now, I hate to do this, but this is the stuff I hate. It's always a good idea to squeeze a little bit out because the end of it gets all dried out. But while I'm sanding it, and that'll probably be, well, 20 minutes, a half an hour, I can work on that repair. And if I can show all these little repairs, then this video is really worthwhile, and I feel like I've accomplished something. But I know I've accomplished something when I get to the Nats or Brodax and I see 8, 10, 15 people with incredibly beautiful planes, and they tell me that they've picked up something from these videos. Okay, now that's when that's sanded out, that'll be just the thickness of the fingernail, that little piece that it's taken the place of, but no more than that. Boy, that would be it. And this is what I always do. I squeeze out the first little amount, because this, what happens is on the end, it just gets so thick and it doesn't stick well. This is the kind of thing you wish, well, I wish I could, times I guess I could live without it. But in the very end, again, you can buy it in a body shop. And one tube, believe me, will last a lifetime. I think I've had this tube for 10 years. Yeah, this is one way you can keep from digging into the hinges and the edges. Always use a block where the paper is rolled up. And what that does, that allows you to do the sanding. I always try to do the front edges and the hinge pockets dry. The reason for that is I don't want to get water down in where the slots for the hinges are. Even though I've tried to be careful and get dope down in there, I really don't want to see those pucker up. I really want to aspire to having some nice hinge pockets.
Wendy, I have your coat.
Okay. So here I am. I'm sanding away in here, minding my own business. Karen goes to take something out of this. I'm on the phone with Rich Walbridge, and a suitcase falls on her head, one of these boxes. So she's all beat up. And the paving contractors come to the door. They want to show us samples of their pavers. So, got your jacket? I'll get my jacket.
Yours is out. I put it out.
Where are you going to go, in the front or the back?
No, I'm going to the back. I'm just looking for a phone number for them.
Whoa. We just were by Pete and Mary Ann's the other night, looking at the lights.
The
Beautiful.
Lights, we saw Dory.
Yeah, the lights look beautiful.
Yeah, you like it?
Your Dory is across the street? Yeah.
Loved it.
Ooh, look at this.
Now we want to do lights on the front walk.
You should do the whole driveway.
No,
Nah, it's going to look too. There's your house.
Oh, that looks nice. Well, I can use my hand. I guess I didn't break it. Oh my God.
What'd you do?
He's got virtual. He's got pictures. Let me
Virtual John Pothier stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. See, he took out all the snow. That's not fair.
No. Wait. Look here.
Look how quick. They'll be done by tonight. Oh, look at this. Fantastic. Oh my God, that's gonna look nice.
That's the choices. So choose the best you like for the same price.
Oh, this is interesting.
That's nice. I like that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
What do you do? Okay, here. Oh, see this? See the difference? Look.
Yeah, yeah, of course I see the difference. You do this on a computer, right? On a computer?
You do a good job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at this. They're going to have the whole walk done by the time you're done picking out the shrubs. This
Oh,
looks
I like
nice.
this
That
one.
looks
I
nice.
like this one. I like this one very much.
Well, you tell them what you like.
Okay.
He's going to let you keep them and look at them anyway. So what's the big deal?
These pieces, same color, same color, same color.
Yeah.
And same color.
Yes.
This is different.
I don't like those.
That's different.
Don't like that either.
And that's
Don't
different.
like that either. Only gray.
So we do
You want all gray, right, Kara?
Different colors gray. You can use these and the ones different.
Yeah, okay, so we can, this one, yeah, this is one for the border.
Look at this. While we're doing landscaping choices, the pigeon parts are still here. This is what's left of that pigeon. I got to get this cleaned up. So what should have been a big sand out day turns out to be an on-the-job banjock. I'm sick of looking at you. Anyway, I did get some of the parts sanded out. Of course, I want to get them sprayed before it gets dark. And we spent some more time with the paving contractor, we're really looking forward to seeing the job he's going to do for us. It's exciting. It's getting more exciting by the day. See, I think realistically, this is the last piece I'm going to get done today. So I may as well just, we took a couple hours out of our day with the paver guys. But they are really going to do some super job. I like those John Pothier drawings they did, where they show you ahead of time what the yard is going to look like. Pretty neat. Anyway, we know this was at one point the worst part. Now I think it's only 1 or 2 coats away from being finalized, and I want to get a coat on everything that we sanded today before it gets dark. It's already getting dark out there. What am I talking about? But Karen really is excited. It's really made our day that they came with those samples. Now this was the worst area here that we were working on before. This was it. And right now it looks like we've got at least a good shot at getting it. I'm not sure. Half okay. The flaws are minimized now. But you always, the thing to remember is you can always just keep going over and over and over. You sand it off, put it on. Sand it off, put it on. And as long as you don't put it on, you don't build up the weight. Now, even in the worst of all worlds, if I were to take everything here and just sand it all back down to, down to the tissue, then we could do that. Maybe Richard Oliver's going to do that with the plane he had the problem with. I don't know. But he said he's going to fly it and see if it's a good airframe anyway. And then if it is, of course, maybe he'll have to fly me down to Houston to refinish it for him. I'm not sure. But I want to get going on this because it's getting colder and it's getting darker by the minute. No, it's getting even more bitter cold out here as we get to the end of the day. Now it looks like we're going to beat the sunset here anyway. Now I'll go back over all those other parts that I have, that any dry spots, anything looks like it could use a little more, because I'm hoping this is going to be our one more sand out and we're done. We've got most of the little parts. There's a little dry spot up there. Not much left. They're starting to really look nice. Ooh, this hot looks nice. And when these parts are in silver and they're flawless, you can bet any color you pick, even black, they'll be perfect. Be really nice. I think we are one coat away. We're going to put a little bit of extra material on those spots that we had to touch up. Another day and another coat of silver, and we'll get back and do the whole thing over again tomorrow. Let's hope it doesn't snow. It's early this morning, and we're two things. We're waiting to see if our birds are going to come back, and number two, we're going to see if it's going to snow. They said big snow coming. I'd like to get some more of those parts sanded and painted if that's the case. And today we got our permit to rip up all the stuff in the backyard. And I guess soon the guys that are going to do the paving are going to get in here with the bulldozer and rip everything up and start from scratch. This is going to be a major job. There's nothing a good cup of Javalia coffee won't solve. Get that coffee going, Wendy. We have silver to sand today. Now this morning I want the main thing is, the absolute main thing, I want to look for any spots that are still dry on this. Now yesterday, and we certainly have them, and you can see them if you look real close here, you can see there's just a couple of spots that need to be sanded out. No big problem. I think we'll take care of that right now first thing in the morning. And then we want to go on to the fuse. I want to get the fuse sanded out. And the jig has worked just about as good as you could expect. Pull this off. And we got that little spot that we repaired. That was one of the things that has to, we've got to dress it off when we sand. Actually, we're going to have to sand the whole flap, of course. But I'm just looking for spots. This side looks like it's okay. This side looks like it needs one more coat. But the reality is, if I sand them both down, it'll just be a better job. And that's the spot that's dry right there. Now, as I always do, I try to look at all the parts in the beginning of the day and pick which is the worst. In this area here, for whatever reason, and you'll see as soon as we hit this with sandpaper, you'll see how quickly this will just show its ugly face. And of course, if we can get another coat of silver on some of these parts before the snow actually hits, great. If we can't, the world's not going to end. But as long as I keep going back over it now, it's to the point where I really can't feel it. So I don't want to over sand this and go back down into the tissue. It's just, the idea is just to get the minimum amount of sanding on that, so it'll, right there, you can see it, so it'll be flat. Now what happens is every day that goes by, the sand out of the parts goes a little smoother, and we're starting to eliminate parts. Some of the smaller parts are already done. They're ready for that final coat of silver, which is really an option. You really could get away with painting right over this. But you know what? I'm not going to accept that. I want it even a little bit better. And of course, what we've been doing is putting these coats on relatively thin. Boy, and I imagine when you brush on coats of filler with zinc and talc and everything, it goes a lot quicker, but I think in the end, you're paying a much bigger price in terms of weight. This is the spot we had the problem with. And it's still, when you see these little moon craters, that's one or two more coats down there. But it's, even though I probably could get away with it, yeah, there's a dry spot there, so why am I fooling around? You know, I tried in the past to just sand little spots like this and then just touch it up, and it just, you get frustrated. It's just cheaper in the long run. It's better, I think, just to sand, do it in individual parts, and spray light coats and sand between each coat, and you'll always arrive at the destination if you do it that way. Now I tried a little bit of an upgrade here, because see, what happens is when this is here, you don't really get in the hinge lines and the hinge pockets the way you should, or the way I'd like to. So what I tried to do, I just wanted to see if this would work. Put some number 26 blades and put them corner to corner, and I think that'll be, and if it isn't, of course we can go right back to the old system. Just because as we get into the color and the clear coats, I want to get every part of the hinge line perfect if I can. Now, as I always say, now the second one, I may not even really have to sand this one out. There's a little bit of dry spot there, but you know what? I don't care. I'm so psyched about this plane right now. I want to have it absolutely perfect, and this'll give me one more deck stacked in my favor. One more little thing that this silver will be perfect, because once the silver's perfect, the rest of the finish just goes beautifully. Now here's a couple of things you can that I learned about this. Really to sight down and see that you don't have all three of the blades, or 5 or 2 or whatever, in some order. Another thing, I don't have these glued in yet. I still can move them back and forth, And before I put any glue on them, I want to make sure I have a nice clear, and one's not sticking up too much. In fact, one is. Now that's just looking, it's looking like the middle one has to go down. So, and maybe that's part of this. Maybe that's part of the big secret here, is to get them all lined up accurately. That's pretty good. Yeah, I hadn't remembered or taken into account that thing of getting the hinge lines, and of course when we're doing colored paint, I want to have that. I don't want to have it fade away into the hinge lines. There we go. Now it looks like that's settling on there nice. And I don't want it flying off. Now once it's there, then I can just take some CA and glue the blades in place. And I think that's going to be, well, I'm going to always be able to go back to the old system, but giving me more choices. You know, now here's another thing. When it's warm outside and you're not shivering and shaking and trembling and everything, it seems like things like this jig wouldn't be this important. But I really like the idea I can just grab this with one hand. The parts are stable, and I always want to get extra along these edges. That's such a critical thing. And that all of these are in good alignment, which it looks like they are. And I think this is going to be quite a nice upgrade. Now, because of the impending doom of the weather, and rather than getting all the parts sanded and then paint them all at once, I'm going to run out there and try to get one at a time as I get these parts jigged up. Just so if the snow starts to come, remember, the minute I get snow out there, I'm done. And I can't paint in the house, that's for sure. Those days are gone. So I just want to see if this is going to be any better, because I can spray in at the hinge lines a little better. I have a feeling this is going to be a nice upgrade, but I'll know when I'm done. And if it's not, we just go back to the old slots. Well, see if it's our lucky day with this snow. I hope we beat the snow, because it's going to be annoying if I got to spend another day shoveling. Unbelievable. Definitely looks like it's taking the paint better with that V shape. Allows you to get down into the hinge pockets a little bit better. Since we're coming up on the last coat, we want to get it perfect. See, the other way, I wasn't getting enough paint down into the hinge pocket in that area. Now, just had the battery go dead. I don't know what we missed, what we got, until I look it over. But we're in a little bit of a trying to beat the snow here. But the snow always seems to win in the end. And I'm still busy looking. There's just little dry spots here. A spot there. Spot there, and I want to do the edge again. The edges, for some reason, still don't have that crispness. Now these are parts that are ready for the final coat, except for one more sand out, and there's just tiny little dry spots. that I wanted to address, and I wanted to go over the edges one extra time because the final sand out will be all our decanted, 100% decanted paint, and I'll try to really get it on thin. It's starting to look nice now, though. It's encouraging to see them. Every time I do this, they just get a little bit nicer. So we've got several parts that are ready for the final, absolute final sand out and coat of silver here. And these parts are ready, I think, for their final sand out. One by one, we're closing in on them. This part had a few spots. And this was by far the worst piece of the little pieces. And here's the reason we have to be so concerned with the quality of this paintwork. It's, as I'm even painting this, Mr. Chickie's little memorial is watching me. I cannot let him down. And I always, whenever I think of this, I think of the day that we lost Chickie. It was the first snowstorm of that year when we had to bury him. Looking for Chickie. Is a very predictable place he is. He's either on the B-25 rudder. Look at this guy. Chickie! And guess where he's been going to the bathroom? Right on my beautifully buffed out tail. Anyway. Chickie, I don't know. Anyway, I think Les is going to come over to run that Randy Smith 40. We'll see if he gets here, and we'll try to get some of that on video anyway. Now, if I'm real lucky, and it's my lucky day, I'll be able to get the fuse sanded out, and that's probably going to be all I get to do today. But we're really taking good advantage of if this was a pretty unpredictable day. And anytime you have to take into account that it may snow or may not snow or just be on your guard, just really, it has a negative impact on the day, that's for sure. Now, I'm being really careful about detail sanding this part out. I really want all of these angles, all of these edges inside. I want everything to really be nice. And most of all, this is going to be the trickiest part, to get in here and get, I got that piece of a tune pipe to work down in there. And if I don't get this done today, hey, we'll be fighting the snow tomorrow. I hope not. I would hope nothing. And this is where that little tool getting down into those scoops, it takes a lot more time than you think it does to have even a cowl scoop or one of these scoops if you want it to be really nice. In my case, I really want the whole plane to be nice, but this really helps because I cannot get even my smallest finger or my nose or anything down in there, and this really lets it happen. And it's flexible enough to absorb the curve, because this isn't a constant curve, it's kind of an ellipse. But each time we sand the fuselage and each time we go through this, of course, this gets a little bit easier. In fact, what's happened now is that there's a spot that popped up that I forgot that I had buried, because now I've got it buried in paint, but it still just came popping up right through the silver. By the way, that little outtake of Chicky sitting on the A26 rudder, it just reminds me now, we don't have Chicky, we don't have the A26, but how wonderful it is to relive great moments and enjoyable memories from, boy, the wonderful life that I've had. And I'm coming down a home stretch here. I need a coffee break. I want to sand some more on this and then do a final detail sanding with dry sandpaper around all the corners. I want to get in there. And I think that's probably all I'm going to be able to get done today. And if it's not snowing yet, I'm going to try to get a coat of silver on this. Now the area where the fuse joins, the little faux fillet, that's one area. We're going to have to do our little trick with the number 11 blade and some thin CA, and then get in there. Again, the detailing of all this is going to be very time consuming. I don't anticipate this is going to go very quickly, but I want it to be really as nice as I can make it. These are these little edges and angles and fillets, every one of these edges. Yeah, an example is right. Oh, let's look up here. There's a little low spot there. See where that? I don't want any of that. Oh, there's a little rough spot there. That I'll hit with some thin CA. But the detailing, even though this is sanded out, it's the detailing that's going to take the better part of this next couple hours. And this is where it just gets really, I guess the right word is time consuming, where you just think it's going to take a few minutes, and it takes a lot of time getting in even just these little edges and areas. But boy, when they're all dusted off nicely, what a nice look the model has, in my opinion anyway. And it sure is a lot lighter than putting one of those big radius fillets in there. This is the best technique I know for getting these little reverse edges to stick down. And while it's still wet, whoop, just fold up a piece of sandpaper and that knocks it right back down. Anything that starts to get loose, but a final step. I'm going to try to get silver on this today. Next coat of silver. I'm guessing it's going to need a few more. M600 everything down. I sanded, one of the things I spent a lot of time on, I did inside the cowl as much as I could with little blocks and little stuff like that. worked on the fillets a little bit here, the little pseudo fillets. And I want to get in here. I want that paint hopefully to be relatively nice, since you may be able to look down and see some of that. And as you can imagine, toward the end of the day like this, it isn't getting any warmer out there. That's for sure. But we are ready. Ooh. Can't wait for it to warm up. Oh my God, look at this thing leaking already. Didn't get the cap on tight. This will get sanded off, so it's not a big deal. Nice big dry spot right up there on the nose. Oh, how can you do that to me? All I gotta say is I'm glad I'm not painting a one-piece plane today. Oh man. A lot easier doing it piece by piece. Now it's looking like this coat will sand out real nice. I don't see too many dry spots. Ooh, bird almost flying by. Okay, I'm looking for dry spots right there, right there. Seam in the middle, all the edges. Now we're right on track for using 2 pints of silver if we sand it all off. This is the last of the decanted material in here. And if I have to, of course, I'll mix more, but usually 2 pints will do it, assuming that you sand almost all of it off, that you don't get too cute. And there's been times I put on a lot more than that and sanded a lot less off. But if you're in doubt, 2 pints is usually a good starting point. But if you sand it a lot off, and again. But this is going to be the end of our 2 pints. Now, because from this point on, I'm just going to be putting a little bit of, well, just going to add just a little thinner to it. Because I want to get the last coat, or the last coat plus a little bit. There's probably some little flaws I still want to work on. What I still want to do is I want to get that last coat on as thin as possible. And if it does snow, I still have to do the wing. I have not done the wing yet. If it does snow, it'll give me a whole day to just sit and grind out the wing and run the snow blower. So we're into this basically from this point on. We've had 2 pints of material of the Brodak silver. And this at the end is the decanted material. I don't put any of this. I don't want to put this in the gun until we're ready to shoot tomorrow. And that heat is on almost constantly. It's definitely below freezing out there. Those parts will be cooking up overnight. Well, the new snow day predicted came last night as predicted. Just what we need. A winter wonderland. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. There's just, I'm getting bored with it all. Getting bored with all the every morning new snow. There's supposed to be more coming this afternoon too. Oh yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. That's what we're going to be doing. Oh man. It's mushy snow. Mush. That's all it is mush. Look at that. The story of 2008. 2008 and 2009 is a building season. And we thought they were going to start digging up the backyard today, but the next day we got our permits. Lovely, just what we need. Lovely, the schools are all closed. How about the hobby shops?
Storm coverage this morning. We've got Tony Caputo all morning, and now it's that freezing rain. As a matter of fact, some of the equipment we use, some of the line.
Oh yeah. Now I'm glad I'm not spraying my silver out here today. Oh my God. There's a lovely sight. How we dream about these summer barbecues. It looks like it's turning to rain of all things. Ugh. There's my best friend on a day like today. My 2 best friends. Not my best friend, best friend. Oh, we got Scott Dinger's carbon tank done. This will probably be a big help to him in getting his new plane trimmed out. Of course, he's probably flying every day like Richard Oliver, but even though it's a crappy day, we got a lot of sanding to do today. And I hope Scott Dinger, hey, he's been great. He's made us mufflers. He's welded things for us. Glad I can do a little payback to him. Scott, you're okay. Now, because of the snow, there's really no rush, 'cause I won't be able to spray this today anyway, but I wanted to show the bad spots. We got a spot where we've gone through, this is where we've gone through the tissue, a high spot, kind of a lump here. There's also one joint right here that the tissue is coming up, so this whole wingtip is going to have to be addressed. And luckily it's the outer wingtip, so if it adds a little weight, it won't care. This panel looks dry right up in here. I can still see the joint where the double tissue is. It means it's going to need at least one more sand out, one more coat. This is inside the fuselage, so I don't really care, but I do like to make it as neat as possible, just for my own satisfaction. See, what I try to do is evaluate this at the beginning of a day. We got a spot down here that's needing some attention where we're coming to the points, and this actually is sharp. Dry spot down here. We got to work this fillet with the little, you almost guaranteed to have to do that on every little fillet area, a reverse curve. We get the number 11 blade in there. Again, I like to evaluate it. I like to just look. This tip, this is going to need some work. That I went through everything there trying to pick out a high spot. And of course the hole right along there, we'll go through the whole thing, thin CA, and get in there with that little body filler, that tube. But what I try to do first is pick the worst spot. Now it looks like the worst spot on the wing, both of the tips, but the outer tip is the worst. You can even see there's a spot up here I don't like. So the first thing is I'm going to get out the sandpaper, get some clean, nice warm clean hot water, and get sanding. Now the thing I want to try to figure out here how bad this wingtip is, and this is going to need a whole sand out, so I may as well just bite the bullet and work up onto the wing about an inch. Work the edges, because it's really in the points that it gets kind of critical, I guess, semi-critical or whatever. It's right in that point that it gets to be where you've got a lot of, you're going to have a lot of repair, but the outer wingtip is certainly the best spot in the whole world to repair. Who cares? Now once I get a little bit of sanding on this, what happens is now I can see where those bad spots are that are coming up. You can see right there, that's dry, that's got to get sanded through. Out here we've got little dry spots, I'll call them dry spots. Right here is a place where the tissue wrinkle is not sitting down the way it should. And right here we can see we've got little issues there. But the answer to this is just to sand out the whole thing and just get it down. Oh, see, we don't care about the outer tip. If it needs 10 extra coats of dope out here, this is the one place in the plane it really doesn't matter at all what this is going to weigh. If we got to put 20 more coats of silver, but for sure this is the top. This is what you'll see when you look at the model from when it's sitting on its feet. So I want this to be, of course, if you have a choice, you want the whole model to be perfect, but if you do have a place where you have an error, you'd like it to be at least in an inconspicuous spot on the bottom or in the pipe tunnel or something. Now luckily the wing is one of the pieces that doesn't have a lot of difficult places to address, and in the case of the outer tip, you can be generous in the application of paint, put it that way. Now I would always like to try to do this in negative finishing, in other words grind down through the material until I get everything as flat as I'd like. But in reality, if I have to put a little bit of that nitrous stain out here, or just keep putting more paint, and because today there's absolutely no painting going to go on, even if I get the wing done in this session, what I'll do is work on detailing out some of the other parts that may or may not need another coat. I'm pretty sure the fuselage needs another coat, but to me this is pretty relaxing right now. Karen's got some cooking going on up there, and the snow is falling, and yeah. I asked Karen this morning, I said, is it good to be Karen Ertnowski today? And she looked out and she says, it's always good to be Karen Ertnowski. I like her attitude. Anyway, we're coming down on having one side of this pretty flat. Now that I've got most of the tip sanded out, the trick is to get it blended up on the leading edge, and then I want to flip it and do the other side. And I want to work up onto the wing about 3-4 inches. Being very conscious of where those bad spots are. But this is the miracle of silver. It always shows you stuff. Now, when this was in raw wood, I thought it was pretty good, to be honest. I was thinking, oh, this will be the first time in my life I'll put the silver on and it'll look just as good in silver. It ain't happening. It ain't happening, chickie. That's all there is to it. So now you can see the bad spots really start to come through. Now you see what that was. That's just a lump, an imperfection in this. Where what really happens here is this side went through the tissue and it expanded. And here's the joint of the wood where it should have been all along. Well, it's not smooth. We got a gap we got to deal with there. But we know how to deal with that. And we know how to deal with virtually all of these things. It's just that we want to try to find the best way, the way that makes the most sense. And in reality, the way that's going to give us the best possible job in the end. And all these little imperfections have to be taken care of. There's a very good reason. A good part of this plane is going to be black. And when you do any black plane, the black better be perfect. And I don't know exactly what the trim is yet. My feeling is I'm going to wait. I've got some concept drawings done, but I want to spend more time, dedicated time, where all this base is drying. Now, Bruce Hunt told me one time, Bruce is a good friend, of course, and he said he was curious to see how the Tiger Cat was going to dry up, if it was going to be a problem in the end. Well, Bruce, I'm happy to report, here we are many years later, many flights later, and I think that plane still is a 20-point plane. This is the new Karen and Curlers look. What are you making? It smells good downstairs. I'm not sure this is what I would want for lunch.
Not lunch.
I don't know.
Not for lunch.
Not lunch, huh?
I'm making chicken parmesan.
Now see, she's just as happy up here doing this as I am sand and silver. What's wrong with that picture? I need hair curlers. That would make me happy.
Get away. Come on.
See, now she should be watching Windy videos. Instead, she's watching Essence of Emerald videos. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this picture?
Now that's one thing that'll make, guaranteed will make that wing sand out go a lot faster. Now, even though we've sanded this, we're getting down into bare wood here, and I don't want to dig that any deeper, but the repair of choice, as always, the way that I've found it works the best. And I've tried a lot of different ways of doing this, including making tissue patches. The reason for this is I want to harden up all the wood around it. And if this is still leaving me with a gap or a little low spot, then I'll have to resort to either filling it with CA or some other material. Now while I'm doing this, I can look, I got a low spot right here where that, and there's, whenever you have these, what looks like a wrinkle, you can put a million little pinholes in it. And you feel if it's soft, you know that's the whole problem. Now that isn't soft. So this is probably going to be overkill, but it won't hurt anything. It's the outer tip. Now what happens when you put silver back over this, a lot of times you get what I'll call a mottled look, where the silver doesn't sit just right until you've sanded it and gone over it maybe twice or 3 times. But as long as it's smooth to the feel, now I'm trying to determine, now that looks okay. Now, here's the other issue, and I wanted to show all these because these are the critical things. You can see this is not really as nice and smooth as I'd like it to be. There's some rough areas there, but it's the outer tip. It's not going to be a problem to fix. If the whole plane was the outer tip, it'd be like painting a motorcycle. Just paint away. We let this dry, and we'll go back and sand the whole area again, because from this point on, I'm going to really be looking for, if nothing else, the top of the outboard tip to be perfect. It took quite a while to get that flattened out. A lot of low spots. There's a spot up there. I'm not sure that's going to come out in another couple of shots. Now what I wanted to do, the next thing, I wanted to sand out the trailing edge, because there's a lot of little spots on the trailing edge that are not just right. Leading edge and trailing edge. Now this is always a tricky area to get, because I want to get a nice radius on this, but I don't want to have where I'm sanding through in every possible spot, same as a leading edge. You really can't realistically use a block here. I've tried to use one of those polywogs that has a shape in it. Not a good choice. And I want the top and the bottom radius to be very similar here, so if I can get that. And just like every other day, we have to plan our whole day around what's the weather going to be. And what are these ancillary obligations we have, because we still own this rental property. We still have to be over there and shovel and clean a walk and driveway and everything. It's a pain in the neck. Now let's see, that looks pretty good. That looks like I could live with that. Now the leading edge, of course, is just a little more. And I always like to have the leading edge as perfect as I can, because as you're coming around, you see the light go right across the leading edge, and it always is one of the things I always really like. If you look at it, if you're a connoisseur of beautiful planes, as I pretend to be, I am. But in the case of the wing, I like to get the tips, the edges, and then leave the flats for last. All these flat areas are relatively easy to do relative to all the edges and corners. So that was my motive here. Try to do all the hard spots first. Now what I want to do, see, I try not to keep water on it even a second longer than necessary. Okay, now we're starting to come through. As we're starting to come through, I'm going to put some thin CA on that, because I don't want to go down through. I don't want to go through into all these spots. Now, as soon as I see or feel that I'm going through, in this case I see, that's a rough spot right there. Dry it up real good. In any place you see that there's no silver, it's probably a good idea to let this just do its magic. And if you didn't have this, the alternative would be 3, 4, 5 coats of either primer or something with talc. I just think, and plus you'd have to wait for it to dry, then it'd be soft. Where in our case, a minute from now we could be sanding this. Plus it also hardens up the leading edge to the point some point where I know the leading edge guys are grabbing it and launching it and doing all these things. So it's just adding, it's doing 2 or 3 things at once. Now it's time to cut up some more sandpaper. I cut maybe, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 sheets up at a time. There's a very distinct size that I like to use. If it's bigger than this, it gets clumsy and starts banging into things. If it's smaller than this, it's yeah, inefficient, I guess. I'm not sure. But here's the point, is to do this amount of finishing, I'm probably going to use the better part of that sleeve of sandpaper up. And when I've tried to do it with the idea in mind, I'll do it economically and save sandpaper, never really worked. I put twice as much work in, and the result wasn't as good. And there's just, it's looking like, because of all the spots we've sanded through, it's looking like we really have minimized the amount of paint on that. We won't know until, of course, you weigh the parts, but minimizing this is really going to be a big step. If we're a little bit ahead, nicer, we can put more clear, more trim colors, whatever. But no matter what, we're going to stay in our parameter. Now, if this comes out an ounce heavier than what we have on our little goal, well, this plane is, then I'll have to readjust things accordingly. And you just can't do this kind of work and not use sandpaper up, because that sandpaper, you can use it, and what happens is it'll cut for, I guess, an amount of one area. But then what happens, you go to do the next area and it's kind of dull. Well, if you have crisp sandpaper for the whole job, it goes so much quicker. It's well worth, to me, well worth the cost, because what I'm trading is time, and it's making it more enjoyable to do it instead of something that's a giant hassle. Now, our next little thing, and I'm in keeping with my original goal, I want to do all the edges, all the corners, all of these center pieces, and then the last thing, do the big flat areas, because they're going to be a piece of cake. The reality is, now I got, again, my number 11 blade, and I'm poking this, looking for soft spots. It doesn't look like we have any so far on this side. This side looks pretty good, in fact. But I'd rather just do this right now. I'd rather find out. Hey, I got one right there. So I'd rather get that thin CA on there right now. There's one right in that cusp there too. And this is all pretty solid, so you can feel it. Solid, 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 solid. All of a sudden there'll be a soft spot. Now, it's in those soft spots we'll just drool in just a small amount. Wipe it from both sides so I have a little less sanding. And the last thing, very simple, pieces dry sandpaper and just get in the edge. And this pushes down. Whatever is loose in there, it just pushes it down and makes the sand out that much easier. And that side should be nailed down. Now I can sand both sides into the corner. Now this tool is good if you have a lot of bubbles. This works out real well. This is a good thing. We don't have any real big bubbles. The other side is not as good as this. But it's easy for me to save. Since I've tried to prorate out that I will get the whole wing sanded today, I know I'm not going to have the ability to paint today, but it's just letting me prorate this out in reasonable chunks. So it'll be ready to paint the next day. We don't have any snow or rain issues. Now the trick with this is to sand this area and then move the lead outs around, of course. We still got some low spots. See, whenever you see shiny spots like that, you know that's a low spot. We've already got a couple of spots that are getting real thin on that tip, but I want to have all the tips, all of that done, and then I'll do, as the last thing, do all the flat spots. Now a little tip just to show. Where the bubbles were, or the places that were lifting, when that's sanded out, they're going to show as places where the silver kind of disappears because they're the high spots. Now if we were really good about sealing them down, and you can do this over and over again, if it keeps popping up, just keep putting little dots in there wherever you think. And see, I'm going to do up here too. There's, it looks like right there's a little, let me see if I can illuminate it, a little spot. Now what happens is, see, and you can do this over and over again. Now when I hit it with the blade and I feel like it's hard and solid, then I know I've got it nailed down. Because all we're doing is making little thumbtacks to hold that in. And it's the same procedure. And when it's done right, you've hopefully really stacked the deck in your favor that future coats are not going to come up. Now it's this point area, and these points, I'm amazed. I thought these would not be real difficult to get right. These are incredible. They're like roundels, where if they're off just the tiniest amount, they really look terrible. But I'm willing to pay the price, and that's always the answer. That's the answer in life. If you want something, just pay. Now we're almost ready to start doing the flat spots, which is, I'm happy about that because those are the easiest spots. But we do have a couple of dry spots in those flat areas that I got to really be aware of. You don't want to go through if I don't have to. Again, because I don't have to worry about getting out there before it's dark. You know what it does, it's giving me a more relaxing attitude on getting this done. Usually by the end of the day, I like to have some silver shot, but today's not happening. Now with all the edges and tips and angles, and I very carefully check everything with my finger. I know for sure, oh, I just have a drop of CA there I got to take care of. I didn't even see that go over. But beside the point is what I want to do. I want to try to minimize, and that can happen from time to time, because I'm feeling everything with my fingers. And we're ready to start doing panels. Now the sanding of these flat areas is really the easiest part of the whole job. At least I find it easiest. Now one thing that's a good tip, and you may have noticed that in the course of sanding, I try absolutely never to get the wing any wetter than it has to be. I'll do a little area. In this case I'm doing an area about 6-8 inches wide. As soon as I see I'm going through, I'm pretty much done right then. Of course, I'll want to add some material, so in the final sand out, I can take care of that. Now, while doing these edges, corners around the tip weight box, and it just take a lot of time. This part of it usually comes up very, very quickly. Even if it's dry, it comes up quickly. Now I wanted to just do one area and then show it on camera. And actually this is coming up nicer than I thought it would. So maybe we're catching a little break here, but it won't really matter. Now what happens is, That's about as far as I can go. If I do this, I've got to seal it with thin CA. That I shouldn't have to seal. And right there is that mottled effect that we want, where it's just starting to pop through. And there's segments here. There's probably, and I'm going to guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 16 altogether that are just like this. So what do we got? Water on the camera here? Look at this guy. Anyway, if you've picked up tips off of this DVD of how to do this, or even if you know how to do it, and most people do, how you can make it as simple and as quick and as painless as possible, then everything we've done here is so worthwhile. And when you do that, please pass the information on, of course. Well, the whole wing is sanded. It really did come out nice. That really is nice. I'm really happy with the way that worked out. Now, the only issue is the weather. Of course, it's still snowing and or raining out there, so we're not even going to try to do anything as far as putting material on here. That's going to wait for a better day. And I can't even consider doing it in the house with the issues Karen has. So we're pretty much done for today, and that's all. I'm really happy the way that worked out. That is, when you get to this point, we're only, I'm going to guess, maybe 2 coats, maybe 3 away from having a beautiful coat of silver on this and a good substrate. And we could start working with our sketches and deciding what kind of paint job we're going to have on this. I don't know what my birds are doing down there, but they're not coming to the feeder yet. You guys are getting to be a pain. Anyway, Chicky, make them birds come back to the feeder. We need birds. Well, it got really cold last night. The heat was on all night. I'm not sure we need to have these parts dried out any more than we do, but it's certainly not hurting anything. And what I thought I'd do, I'd wait till the warmest part of the day, which is usually around here, about 2 o'clock, the temperature peaks. Take care of a bunch of other things that I need to take care of in the shop. Because I want to get, the next step on this is to get the silver, that next coat of silver on. Like to get that on today if possible, of course. But in the meantime, I wanted to start thinking about the paint job, because we're coming up on a point in time where we've got to really make a decision. Now, just some thoughts, and this is what I really enjoyed about the motorcycle show. Here are some of the choices. Right in the beginning of this, you have to figure out semi-scale is the easiest, because you have, like on a Spitfire, you have this paint job, that paint job, this one, and you, of course, you have the fantasy one. So, but you've got a limited amount of, you're restricted to some degree about it. But in our case, you know, you have a normal stunt ship. You've got unlimited choices now, totally unlimited, and they're all appropriate. Now, one of the things you can always make a decision on, it's a real easy decision. Do you want to lead, or do you want to follow? Now, there's no problem at all if you want to follow. Follow is a good thing. It's easy, it's quick, it's cheap, it's everything it should be. And in that case, what you do is, one of the choices that I would suggest is get some of the videos that have the appearance judging at Brodex or the Nats, show hundreds of paint jobs, and basically what you do is you find one that you like, and then you say, well, he painted his plain orange, well, I'm going to paint my plain orange the same way, and because you've already made that decision. And don't misunderstand this to think that I'm saying following is a bad thing. If there's something you really like and you want to copy it, well, there's no problem at all. And if you found it, it makes your job a lot easier. And if it's got some stars or some flares or something, well, that makes it real easy. But in our case, what we're always trying to do at least in my mind anyway, is we're always trying to lead. Now, I find leading to be more challenging. Leading is what I do is I kind of look at what other people are doing and I try to do something different. Now, let me just explain. And then you hope in years to come somebody appreciates your view of things and they can follow in your footsteps. Now this was 1985, not 95, 85. Look at this, I got a phone call already. I haven't even had my coffee. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Now, the reason I keep a poster size, this plane was known as the Killer Bee, and the reason I keep this, to remind me, 85, that means that was quite a few years ago, a lot of years ago. And what I did with this paint job, a couple of things nobody had really done up to that time. I took this arrangement of the paint and did it with candy apple colors. And then I did what I call my shield. Now, some little thing that I could say, thank you, Big Jim, thank you, whoever. And I replicated it on the tail. And I thought this would be a good starting point. From that point on, I started using candy apple colors as my kind of little trademark thing. Well, that proved to be more difficult and it added weight than using traditional colors, but in this case this was a big plane. But what came out of it is how many people liked this type of trim where it starts at the root and goes out that way. And if you notice from 1985 on, an awful lot of people have complimented me by mimicking it to some degree. Now this whole thing of where it starts out on the leading edge and then spreads out, if you look before 85, yeah, maybe somebody had it, it doesn't really matter. Because a lot of people have it now. It's a very common, and I guess maybe other people like other planes better than mine or whatever, but it turns out that that's one of the things that caught on. Now, Lou Dudka had his version of that, and everybody kind of piled on their own little ideas and thoughts on it. But I thought it really started a little trend that carries on till today. And sometimes people mimic it, they don't even realize the origin of it, and it doesn't matter. It's not like somebody's going to write me a check and thank me for this, but it's just nice to see when you've kind of done something that's caught on. There's another view of that. Dave Fitzgerald's paint job, among others, have kind of been very similar. And it's not like anybody's getting rich off of this, but it's nice to be copied. And you can see the same theme, variations of the theme, and it's proven to be very popular. Now, what I was looking to do with the Testarossa, among other things, is have a very simple paint job. The more simple, the better. But do like the candy apple colors, instead of using candy apple colors, using what amounts to be these high quality colors that I get from Bob Brookins, yellows and reds. Bill Rich, by the way, is using the same paint I'm using on his new ship. And we may have some pictures of that soon. But this Testarossa, the Novanta, and a lot of people have commented they like the look that the plane is very simple, very basic. It doesn't get too complicated. Now, there's a lot of advantages to this. Number one, the less tape lines you have on a plane, the less clear you have to put over to mask it off, so there's a weight saving. If you can come up with a paint job that's relatively simple, it's a weight saver. And if you can get bright enough pigmented colors, it's original. So this is what we're looking to do. And in the future, we have some other ideas. And even in this ship here, what I had made a bunch of drawings because I wanted to lay out some things that appealed to me in the very beginning. And as I thought about them, I was thinking, not really. Now, one of the things that I had thought of in my daydreaming was, I'm sure everybody's seen the Thunderbird paint job. And I had thought maybe I'd mimic that on the bottom of the plane only. Make some kind of Thunderbird thing. And when I thought about it, I said, because we're trying to make this a Chicky plane, and there's got to be some reference to Chicky. He wasn't an eagle. In fact, a 1-ounce bird is hard. It's hard to imagine he was too predatory, except for stealing aircraft parts. But anyway, I had thought about this, given it a lot of thought, and then I abandoned the idea. I said it just wasn't in keeping with the theme of that I was looking for. I was looking for simplicity and bold lines that would stand out while a plane was flying, not only while it was on the ground, but while it was flying. And things like this that get too complicated just disappear in the air and become, I call it a bowl of SpaghettiOs. And I also spent more than one night looking at videos of motorcycles and looking at Harleys and coming up with these modernistic, I call them motorcycle designs that look like, I don't know, I don't even know what they're supposed to look like. And while I was at the bike show, to be honest, I was thinking, yeah, that might look good, and maybe a third layer, because on a motorcycle, it does look pretty good, or flames or something. And I was thinking, I'm not sure. The more I thought about it, the more I thought about, I don't know. Maybe leave that trend for somebody else to start. Maybe Sparky could start that trend. And when I started sketching things out, and I started overlaying things, and I started looking at paint jobs, I thought this might be my starting point, but of course I'm going to have a couple days to sketch while, well, we can't even paint the wing right now. It's too cold out there, but I wanted to spend time, and what I did, I made up, well, where's the rest of them? I made up 20 of these that don't have any paint job on them yet. And the nice thing is, see what can happen with a sketch like this, and we're going to be doing this maybe on the next video at some point in time. What happens with this is it starts out being something, and then you say, well, I didn't like that, that's too fat, that didn't look good. And you wind up with, somewhere down the road, you wind up with something that you can look at and maybe find out that you're happy with. But for right now, and I haven't really been paying attention, we are at the end of this DVD. We're leaving it thinking how we want to do the paint job and how we want to block it out. And we know we've eliminated some of the things that in the beginning were maybe Thunderbirds and maybe Harleys and doing some wild stuff. And I've settled on keeping this very simplistic and very much like the Testarossa and Novanta, where things are very, very simple. And the yellow color stands out. The bright yellow is this more or less the selling feature. And we'll see if that ever becomes something other people like. In the meantime, we're going to pick this up on the next tape. Hope you've enjoyed it, and please share it with all your friends.